What's going on today, YouTube? Rob here. In today's video, I'm coming at you with a deck profile of a deck that has been absolutely flooding the meta since its structure deck came out. And if you haven't guessed already, that is branded Despia. This deck is actually pretty cool as it involves a lot of the Despia cards, and it involves the new branded fusion, which is an absolutely broken fusion spell. Before we get into the video though, I just want to say if you're new to the channel, consider leaving a like, consider commenting, and consider subscribing for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos. And without wasting any more of your time, let's get into it. Alright guys, let's get into this Albaz Despia, branded Despia deck profile. We'll start things off with our main deck. Starting things off, we've got triple copies of Fallen of Albaz. I would probably cut this down to 2, but seeing as I don't have triple Aluber Jester of Despia, I'm playing it at 3. But this card's really good because if it's normal or special summoned except during damage step, you can discard 1 card and fusion summon 1 fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters on either field as fusion material, including this card, but you cannot use other monsters you control as fusion material, and you can only use this effect of Fallen of Albaz once per turn. So it's really good to just get rid of some problematic monsters on your opponent's side of the field, which is really good, and it's just a little bit more of an extender. Then I'm playing a bit of a weirder package, 2 Tragedy and 2 Comedy, rather than playing 3 and 1. For me, this ratio works well, and it's not necessarily guaranteed that I'm going to see Tragedy all the time, or even Comedy playing it at 2 and 2. But if Tragedy is sent to your graveyard or banished by a card effect, you can add 1 Despia monster from your deck to your hand, except Tragedy itself. And you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 branded spell or trap in your graveyard and set it to your field. And you can only use 1 Despian Tragedy effect per turn, and only once that turn. So again, really good for your recursion and follow-ups and interruptions. Whereas Comedy, when your opponent activates a card or effect that targets a face-up Despia card or cards you control, quick effect, you can discard this card and negate that effect. And if this card is in your graveyard, quick effect, you contribute 1 fusion monster and special summon this card. You can only use 1 Despian Comedy effect per turn. Again, really good. I find that this ratio works well for me. This is kind of like a hand trap in and of itself, plus it's a bit of an extender. This helps you recycle your Mirror Jade, actually, which could be really nice. Like I said, double Aluber. I would play 3, but I only have 2, and that's why I have the 3rd Albaz. But if this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 branded spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And if a face-up fusion monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of your opponent's card effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can target 1 effect monster your opponent controls and special summon this card. And if you do, negate that targeted monster's effects until the end of this turn. You can only use 1 Aluber Jester of Despia effect per turn, and only once that turn. Again, just really nice. Way to start off your combos, way to extend, and way to just interrupt your opponent. And then lastly, for at least our Despia monsters, I have 1 copy of Ad Libitum. During your main phase, you can make all monsters you currently on the field gain attack equal to their own levels times 100, and until the end of the opponent's turn. And if this card in your hand or field is used as fusion material and sent to the graveyard or banished, you can target 1 of your Despia monsters or level 8 or higher fusion monsters that is banished or in your graveyard except Ad Libitum and special summon it. You can only use each effect of Ad Libitum once per turn. Again, really good for recursion and follow-up. Then I'm playing quite a few hand traps. Double Effect Veiler, double Snow Rabbit, or Ghost Ogre, double Nib, and double Ash, as well as double Ghost Spell. These are the hand traps that are pretty much here constantly in the meta right now. So I figured I would include them. I might, I don't know, take out the third Albaz and put in a third one of these hand traps. But this is really good for now, and I find this works with some of the other spells in my deck, as I am playing triple copies of Crossout, and I'm also playing triple copies of Talents, but I'll get to that later. But that's pretty much our hand trap lineup. And then I am also playing the Destiny Hero package, just because why not? DPE is really prevalent right now, and it actually helps this deck out pretty well. And it's always good to be able to get the draw 2 with your Celestial, so that's why I play that. Moving on to the spells, we've got triple copies of Branded Fusion, which, again, this card is insane, being able to fusion from the deck. Just by using Fallen Albaz as material and something else is just really great. But being able to use from hand, deck, or field is really just, again, broken. You are locked into fusions when using this card, and you can only use this once per turn, but pretty much the entire extra deck is a fusion-based deck. And again, I'll explain some of the stuff later on when we get to the extra deck. But then we have one Called by the Grave. It's called by. Hard to really not have it. As I was saying, triple copies of Crossout, being able to basically just negate any sort of hand trap that might be problematic to you is really good. So again, that's why we play 2 of everything, so we can at least banish one or whatnot using this effect and negate it, but still be able to use our own. So that's why we play 3 of them, plus it's a quick play spell. Then again, triple copies of Triple Tactics Talent. This meta has a lot of hand traps. As you can see, I'm playing 9, something like that, 9 to 12 at any given time. So this is really good for extending, being able to draw follow-up, being able to interrupt your opponent, being able to overall just break boards and do a whole bunch of stuff with this card. So I'm playing it at 3 because, again, there are a lot of hand traps being used. And then we have the 1 copy of Foolish Burial. You can basically send any of your extra deck Albaz monsters to the graveyard and gain their effects during the end phase. That's basically all that's in here for. Then we have 2 copies of Branded Opening. Again, I'm only playing it at 2 because I only have access to 2. And this card's pretty expensive right now. But this lets you discard 1 card and take 1 Despia monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or special summon it in defense position. Also, for the rest of this turn, after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. Again, our extra deck is mainly fusion. And if a fusion summoned monster or monsters you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard instead. And you can only use each effect of Branded Opening once per turn. So again, this is really good. It offers protection and just overall really helps you out with your combo pieces. And then I'm playing triple copies of Branded in Red. Again, I might cut this down to 2 if I get a 3rd Branded Opening, or maybe I'll throw in the Despia Theater. Not really sure. This doesn't have to be played at 3 though. But this lets you target 1 Despia monster or Fallen of Albaz in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Then you can apply one of the following effect. This lets you fusion summon 1 level 8 or higher fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your hand or field, but it cannot attack directly this turn. And you can only activate 1 Branded in Red per turn. So, this is actually really good. Just, again, being able to have extra fusions on the field and go into more plays. And then lastly, for our main deck, we have double copies of Fusion Destiny. This is just for your DPE, and again, playing it at 2 because it is semi-limited. You can also send this off of Verte. So for this specific variation, I do have Verte Anaconda. Being able to copy your Fusion Destiny, or well, basically it's just used for your Fusion Destiny. Being able to copy it and summon out DPE unless you hard draw it. And then we have one copy of the Dark Charmer Gloomy. Again, these two cards you don't have to play. Right now I'm playing them because I don't have the Masquerade the Blazing Dragon. But once I do have that, then I will be at least putting in one plus the Draco Stapelia, I believe. But for now, this is decent. Your Dark Charmer lets you target one dark monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to a zone that this card points to, which is great as well because you're able to steal DPE from your opponent's graveyard. And if this link summon card is destroyed by battle or is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while it's in its owner's monster zone, you can add one dark monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, and you can only use each effect of the Dark Charmer Gloomy once per turn. Next up, with our fusions, we have one copy of Quartus, which requires one Despia monster and one light or dark monster. During your main phase, quick effect, you can change the attack of all monsters currently on the field to 0 until the end of this turn, except level 8 or higher fusion monsters. Again, all your fusion monsters are level 8 or higher, so if you have multiples on the field, or a lot on the field, you can pretty much push for game with this. If this face-up card in its owner's control leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect, you can add to your hand or special summon one Fallen of Albaz or one Despia monster from your deck. You can only use each effect of Quartus once per turn. Then I've got one copy of Guardian Chimera. I would probably, again, play this at 2 and get rid of the Dark Charmer or Verte or something else in my extra deck. But again, I only have access to one, and right now, because I'm not playing any other packages, this works fine. This requires 3 monsters with different names and must first be fusion summoned using only fusion materials from your hand and field, with at least one monster from each. If this card is fusion summoned by a spell or effect, you can draw cards equal to the number of cards used as material for this or from the hand. And if you do destroy this card, or destroy cards your opponent controls, rather, equal to the number of cards used as material from the field. And you can only use this effect of Guardian Chimera once per turn. And while Polymerization is in your graveyard, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects. That effect doesn't matter because we don't actually play Polymerization. Then we have 2 copies of Titanic Lad. This requires Fallen of Albaz and one monster with 2500 or more attack. This card is also usually just for Foolish Burial or using your monster effects to ditch, as we don't have the Dogmatica engine. But this gains attack equal to the combined original levels of all monsters, or of the monsters rather, used for its fusion summon times 100. And after this card is fusion summoned, for the rest of this turn, it is unaffected by the activated effects of any other monsters special summoned from the extra deck. And then during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can add to your hand or special summon one Dogmatica monster or one Fallen of Albaz from your deck. You can only use this effect of Titanic Clad once per turn. Then we've got 2 copies of Albion. This requires Fallen of Albaz and a light monster, and if this card is fusion summoned, you can fusion summon one level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck except Albion, the branded dragon, by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from your hand, field, and or graveyard. And during the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, You can add to your hand or set one branded Spotlight Trap directly from your deck. You can only use each effect of Albion the Branded Dragon once per turn. This is really good, again, for being able to bring out your Mirror Jade and being able to just recur some sort of advantage by adding more fusion monsters to the field. But then we have 2 copies of Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, which requires 1 Dark and monster and 1 Fallen of Albaz. If this card is fusion summoned, you can discard 1 card and fusion summon 1 level 8 or lower fusion monster from your extra deck except Lubellion. By shuffling materials mentioned on it into the deck from your monsters on the field or graveyard and or face up banished cards. Again, so really good for recursion, and you can use this effect to be able to summon out your Mirror Jade, which is really nice. And for the rest of this turn, this card cannot attack. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except fusion monsters. That clause, again, doesn't really matter too much because most of the deck is fusion. Then we have 2 copies of Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon, which requires Fallen of Albaz and 1 Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link monster. You can only control 1 Mirror Jade, the Iceblade Dragon once per turn. Once per turn. Quick effect, you can send 1 fusion monster from your extra deck to the graveyard that mentions Fallen of Albaz as material and banish 1 monster on the field. Also, this card cannot use this effect the next turn. If this fusion summon card in its owner's possession leaves the field because of an opponent's card, you can destroy all monsters your opponent controls during the end phase of this turn. Again, really good. If this gets destroyed, you can basically Raigeki your opponent's monsters. Also, because this is kind of like a soft once per turn, if you recycle this with your ad libdom, then you just get the effect again, which is great. And then I'm playing, obviously, DPE. Being able to have a lingering effect to come back every standby phase after using its own effect to target itself and pop a card on your opponent's side of the field is great. Don't really have to explain DPE. And then we have 1 copy of Proskenion, which is 1 Despia monster plus 1 light and 1 dark monster. During the main phase, quick effect, you can target 1 fusion, synchro, Xyz, or link monster in your opponent's graveyard and banish it or special summon it to your side of the field. Again, being able to take your opponent's DPE, for example, and either banish it or special summon it to your side of the field is just great. And basically, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle as well, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack or defense, whichever is higher. You can only use each effect of Despia and Proskenion once per turn. So again, a little bit harder to get this out, but if you can, you're able to do a lot more with it and basically just push for game. And lastly, I'm playing the 1 Brygran, the Glory Dragon, which is Fallen of Albaz and 1 level 8 or higher monster. Cannot be destroyed by battle, and while you control this fusion summoned card, your opponent cannot target other monsters you control with monster effects. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can add to your hand or special summon 1 Tri-Brigade monster or Fallen of Albaz from your deck, and you can only use this effect of Brygran once per turn. Again, I'm playing Brygran because I don't have 2 copies of the Masquerade, the Blazing Dragon. I would probably put that in instead, or the 2nd copy of Chimera, but you know what, this actually does kind of work because you're able to recur Fallen of Albaz, because we're not playing any other Tri-Brigade monsters, and pretty much interrupt your opponent and use it Fallen of Albaz plus a monster on their field as a fusion, which is really good. And this not being able to be targeted by opponent's monster effects is also really good. Plus, it just works well with the deck. Alright guys, that's it for this deck profile. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, be sure to comment, and be sure to subscribe for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos. Now, I know that this deck profile is a lot different than most of the branded Despia decks out there. Like I said, when I get access to a few of the other cards, I'll probably change it up to make it a full 15 card fusion extra deck, as you don't necessarily need the Dark Charmer, and you don't need the Verte Anaconda. But other than that, I don't know entirely what other changes I might make going forward, but I do plan to take this to locals at least, if not a few tournaments in my area if I can. Again, if you guys enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, be sure to comment, and be sure to subscribe, and as always, I will catch you in the next one. That's game.